So Department for Work and Pensions, our data is real people behind it, real lives. And the decision makers in the department have got a lot of big decisions to make. As more and more data becomes available through open data initiatives, different technologies, web scraping APIs, we kind of need to get a really deep understanding of the context in which people are living their lives, the complexities, and that kind of local that was mentioned earlier. The theme of the day is about bridging the gap between data and society. And so I'm going to talk about a few of the products and projects that we've got on the go within the Data Science Hub that I lead in Newcastle. And this is about changing relationships with data. It's about changing conversations, about removing that transactional relationship with data and trying to turn it into more constructive and informed conversations. So DWP is massive. It's a big organisation. We support almost every UK citizen at some point in their lives, either whether it's support to do with work, with health, or later in life. A snapshot at any point in time would see the department supporting around 1 in 3 people in the country, so about 22 million individuals. It's larger than most retail organisations in terms of the people that are employed there and the number of offices and sites that we've got. The transactions that take place through payments is probably more than a lot of large banks. And as a consequence of that, we've got a lot of data and a lot of decisions to make. The importance of our services to the many millions of people that we serve means that we've got a responsibility to keep improving and keep innovating. And as well as improving the outcomes and the user experience for the individuals that interact with the department, that's about improving the organisation and the effectiveness and the efficiency of the organisation as well. Now, outside of work, in our real lives, our expectations and our standards of how we consume and receive information are a lot higher than they are within the walls at work. It was mentioned earlier in the talk of the BBC about the use of Excel and other things within work. But outside of work, we're interacting with apps and data and information all the time. Apps for running, apps for diet, apps for all sorts of things. We've got apps, so Expedia curates information, like data aggregators and meta search engines. Apps that let us go look one step ahead in terms of the weather, what's going to come up. And then apps where we can just keep more informed about what's going on in the world. And we can use these seemingly unconnected bits of information together as well. So you'll see on here that there's a flight booked from Newcastle to Vegas. We can see that there's a storm up ahead in Vegas, but we're learning how to beat the system through AI at the table. So all of these seemingly unconnected bits of information and apps can work together to keep people better informed. So when I took charge of the DWP Data Science Hub in Newcastle, that's what I wanted to bring within the walls at work. I wanted to make people more informed and be able to be as informed and have the same expectations inside work as we've got outside of work. So the Data Science Hub was formed when the data part of DWP moved into the technology part of DWP, which is now DWP Digital. And a few hubs were born, one in Newcastle. We're a multidisciplinary team. So we've got a relatively small team, but a mix of data scientists. We've got some software engineers working with us. We've got delivery leads and business analysts and so forth. But still a relatively small team. And I wanted to bring this kind of concept together and to kind of make this information and data available to people so they can make their decisions more timely, more effective. And one of the best ways, and I think there's been a theme throughout the day, one of the best ways to do that is through data visualization. So this one might split the room. It sometimes does. Usually me over here and everybody else over there. So I wrote a very short kind of piece in a blog recently about dashboards and my feelings on dashboards. So the feelings are kind of threefold, really. One about the word itself. I think it's irrelevant now. I think it's being used for virtually any visual interface to data, and I don't think that's right. And I think it lessens some of the really complex things that we need to be able to do. So another one's the actual concept of a dashboard. I think things have moved on. We're moving into a world of bigger data, more sophisticated analytics, better visual design. In almost any definition of dashboard or data dashboard you can find, the verb that's associated with it is monitor, which I think is far too passive. And I think we can be far more active in terms of our use of data and interaction with data. Most importantly, though, the third sort of angle of this that I'm concerned about is the user need. Is there a need for data dashboards in their kind of traditional sense? Or is that need kind of a want, or actually, in some cases, just imposed on people? They're just given a dashboard. So I think dashboards become a lazy synonym for data visualization. I think dashboards oversimplify problems in certain instances, and that granularity that we've seen earlier, the richness of the data sometimes gets obscured through the use of aggregation and other things. And through that aggregation and through that obscuring the data, that can sometimes potentially damage the trust in the data as well, because it's not, things are more complicated than that. So I think we sometimes limit unnecessarily people's ability to answer complex problems by reducing the complexity of the problem in the information that we're giving them. So my hypothesis was that rather the actual need is for a better and a deeper access to the information. And what we need to do is work harder to get that information to the users. I've been lucky enough to work with a few really good practitioners of data visualization. So Alan Smith, who's the head of data viz at the Financial Times, and Andy Kirk, who's a kind of award-winning author and consultant on the topic. And these guys are really, really good at putting information across and relating in the data journalism and kind of more web-based data visualizations. And I think that outside of, as I mentioned before, in the real world, outside, we're getting more sophisticated in the way that we consume information. So what I wanted to do was, while I do think there is a space for dashboards, don't get me wrong, and I do think there is a space for off-the-shelf interactive visualization tools that you can load data on yourself, but I think primarily the role of those is for analysts and people who are comfortable with data. But I think there's a bigger space there for bespoke visual tools designed with more sophisticated data in it and more sophisticated visuals. In the same way that people accept that the machine learning and AI should be part of business, I think that more sophisticated visualization should be part of business as well. So that was my plan when I started with the team, was to bring some of the kind of more data journalist principles and the more sophisticated visualizations to tools within the department. So I'm going to talk through a few of them. As was mentioned earlier, people are naming things, so we have named these things. So this is the first one, Churchill. So Churchill's aimed at policymakers, and well, policy in general, named because it was Churchill who established the UK Central Statistics Authority, which brought together disparate statistics from around the place and eventually expanded and became the Office for National Statistics. So it's about curation of data. So I spoke a lot about sort of users and user need. So we went out and we spoke to a lot of policy folk, policy analysts and policy makers. So within the department, we've got a breed of people who are policy makers and another breed of people who are policy analysts, and these work together and exchange information. And we sat down, we spoke with a lot of them, and this is the user need that we came up with. And this, we then expanded those conversations. We worked with the Office for National Statistics, we worked with other government departments to try and understand their relationship with data and their need in terms of data. So I'm going to dissect this a little bit. So within this, there's a data challenge. So this is very, very context specific. So enough will depend on the task, relevant will depend on the task, and it might depend on the person or the data or the time that you've got. Trust might be, I always go to Helen for my data, and I know that Helen will give me the right data. Or trust might be, it needs to be an official statistic or whatever. So there's a data challenge here, and that's one of the things is a very, very context-specific data challenge, and depending on the policy person or depending on where they're coming from, that's one big challenge for us. So that's kind of the back-end challenge, different data at different times if we're talking about an application here. There's a common goal, inform and communicate, policy design briefings, a bit about evaluation in there as well. And that's something that was found across the piece. This is largely a generic sort of goal, common goal for policy. And what we found that this informing part of it was very frustrating, very iterative. So there's time consuming in terms of getting the information, getting the right information, getting that trust, etc. And there's a visualization challenge here as well. So compare and explore by geography time characteristic to identify trends and issues. So we can think of this bit as the repeatable task. This is the bit that we've got a bit more control over in terms of it's not the context-specific data challenge, and it's not the more generic need. So this is about similarities and differences, about finding out more and investigating things. Geography time characteristic give us something to go on. So at least there's something tangible in there that we can attack. So this is a kind of when and where and what type questions. And so we can dig a little bit deeper into this one, because this is about how we attack the challenge. So these were the words that policymakers used. This is what they wanted to know. They wanted to know the biggest things, the smallest things, the most, all of these words, hotspots and things like that. And we deliberately separated out the data ask. So we didn't ask them what data they wanted, we asked them what they wanted from the data. And these are the things that they wanted from the data. So we can translate these into relationships that analytic people are more familiar with. So this is magnitude. This is change over time, distribution, spatial, and rank. So this is how we now had illustrating the complexity. We can understand how this relationship between policymakers and policy analysts ended up in an exchange of huge packs of information. So backwards and forwards, because we're having might be a bar chart for magnitude, a line chart for over time, some kind of map for spatial, and there's all of these different asks. So what we wanted to do was try and come up with a tool that addressed all of these visualization needs and all of these data needs, so that the policymakers didn't translate this into a visualization tool, or they just wanted this information. So we took those needs and designed a tool and added our own need in, which was maximum context. So this is giving as much data as we can to illustrate and maintain the complexity of the data around it. So it's quite a challenge. One of the things that we could do is give access to an off-the-shelf visualization tool. There's Tableau, ClickSense, various different things. But we were very, very conscious of the varying degrees of data literacy within the community of people that we were trying to serve here. So what we did do was design a bespoke application to try and address this visualization challenge, something that could sit on the desktops of policymakers. So hopefully this will work. So this is Churchill. There's your kind of what, where, when that we spoke about, the geography, time series, the kind of characteristic information that we're trying to address here. Churchill's been built in using the kind of government digital service digital life cycle, so Discovery, Alpha, Beta, Live, and we're currently in private beta. So this is available on the desktops of everybody within DWP, so there's about 80,000 people work at DWP. On all the iPhones that people have got departmentally, so I think it's about 7,000 iPhones it's on at the minute. And we've opened it up to other government departments, NHS Digital, Office for National Statistics, Treasury, and various other friendly faces, and also to a few people from the independent sector, so Full Fact, Open Data Institute. So what Churchill does is bring data together from various different open data sources and trusted data sources. So for trust, in the kind of MVP version of this, we took to mean official and national statistics. So if we're taking data from externally, that was the data that we knew people trusted, and we pulled that data together from various different APIs that are available, put it in a database behind, and then presented the application via an API. So we've got sort of what we're on 1.2. So this went out back end of August, beginning of September. So it's been sort of 8 to 10 weeks it's been available outside the department. So let's get stuck in. So I'm going to teach everybody about Gateshead, which is where I live. What are we going to do? Let's have a look. Number of people in Gateshead. And when do we want to look? Let's have a look at the snapshot. So this is the visual. So each one of those lines is local authority. There's Gateshead with 201,000 people. I can find all of the things that people wanted, the policymakers wanted. So I can look at highs and lows and extremes from this. I can look at the ranking if I want to, so I can see the order. I can look and see, so Birmingham, I think it is the biggest, which is about 1.1 million people. If I remember rightly, this is Glasgow. So Glasgow is about 3 times the size of Gateshead. So if we want to know where Gateshead is, hopefully this one will take me. There's Gateshead, little Gateshead up there. And I can start to do comparisons with the neighbours. So County Durham, where's my neighbour? So the neighbour's about 2.5 times the size. Where's Northumberland? And I can see more about the context of what's going on in and around there. And I can compare 2 places. There's Glasgow. And so I'd start immediately, I can kind of explore this in a number of different ways, which are the ways in which policymakers wanted to interact with this data. I can dig a little deeper. Let's have a look. Explore Glasgow by age and gender. So I can see that's we've gone on with Glasgow. So Glasgow is a kind of city centre, so there's kind of a young population and increasing in terms of 25 to 29-year-olds. And I can start to drill down even more and have a look at some more things. Let's have a look at something a bit more interesting. So this is a sentence structure. So let's have a look at resident-based earnings. Average weekly amount of resident-based earnings. And I think there was a comment made before about can we look at this at different points in time. So we've got the ability to kind of go backwards and look at different points in time from when this data was published. So I could compare average weekly amount at one point versus average weekly amount at another point. So I can create this chart. And this is where the kind of heat map thing comes in a bit more useful. So before I was just using the map to kind of compare and navigate. So now I can see that everybody in and around London earns more than people elsewhere. The coastal towns, which are the darker blue ones, are kind of the ones that have the lower earnings. And I can keep doing this. Let's have a look who's got. So that's West Somerset, I think, from memory. Yeah, which is a little bit adrift, and we can identify that straight away very, very easily. And that's more. Let's have a look. So I'm going to look at employment support allowance, which is one of the benefits that the department pays for people with health problems. So I can look at percentage of population, which is better on a heat map. And the map changes, so we can see that actually what's going on here, this is kind of old industry areas. So we've got west of Scotland, South Wales, bit of the north of Wales and the northeast, so it's areas of old industry. We can have a look at the biggest one here, which is Blackpool. And then Blackpool stands up on the other bar. So now we can see that Blackpool, as well as having one of the highest proportions of people with health problems, also has one of the lowest weekly amounts of income. You can sort of compare across these indices very quickly and analyse the data in lots of different ways. So we can then explore this over time. So that actually, before I do that, I think, so this is the kind of what I meant by maintaining the complexity of the data within the visual. So we can look at this a number of different ways, but that granularity of data is still there. So I trust this more than I would a pie chart because it's summarising the data far too much, whereas actually I feel that I'm touching and feeling and interacting with the data. The point of this is then that a policy maker can get a better question to go to their policy analyst with. So we talked earlier on about questions, and this is generating questions that are much more direct, and we can go and hit the data. There's links to where this data comes from and all the metadata and everything. It comes from NOMIS. So we can explore over time. So just that's pulling the data from the database via the API. So you can see that it's not particularly, I'll show another example in a second, which is better than this. But we're throwing that context to people. So this is all of the data, all of the local authorities. We can see the employment support allowance was introduced in November 2008. And then there was a point in time when people who were previously on incapacity benefit, which was the previous incarnation of employment support allowance, moved on. So that's when and then flattened out as everybody moved across. Now, if I don't want to look at all of these, I can hide to get rid of them. If I want to show these in kind of separately, I can look at them. So people, the different user needs. These iterations have come from working with users who said, well, I don't want all the lines on the chart. I just want to be able to look at my one. And then again, I can drill in and look at the age gender breakdown of this over time. I can see that same shift. We can see that this is kind of what we've got. About half people are over 50, which fits with that old industry. So kind of it's all building that narrative over time. So this is different from what we've heard earlier, which was storytelling. This is story forming. This is putting the ability in the hands of the users to actually work out what it is they want to know and get those better questions. So I said I'd give a better example. So we've got local authority in there. We're building a region view currently, which isn't in, but we've got parliamentary constituency. Let's just pick a top one there. So this is the data that we've got in. It's not. I said earlier that we wanted to get the visuals right, so that people could do what they wanted to do with the data, and then we start filling it up with data that fits with the scope of what we've done. Let's have a look at employment. The percentage, and so we can jump straight to over time if we want to. Just takes a couple of seconds over the Wi-Fi. So I can add, let's have a look, add somewhere in Scotland. I can add different areas on here, either via the map or just via typing it in. I can flip those out. So we can see that these areas of the country are very, very different immediately. And I might start asking questions. What's this big spike here? Why does that do there and it doesn't do it there? What's going on? Those sorts of questions immediately. So that's in a nutshell. That's Churchill. That's what we've built. We're iterating all the time. We're working with different people, and we're hoping to make Churchill public very soon. But now we've got this. We're starting to get this next level questions and working with different areas of the business to understand the what's next questions. So we've got this data, and I can start to say, well, where's going up very quickly compared to how it used to do? So if I go back and talk about the next kind of bit of work that we're doing, Greyhound. They've all got cool names. This one's Charlie's fault. So Greyhound's about speed. It's about that ability to kind of, I've got all this information now, where do I need to look? So I've got this is Churchill's in private beta, so we've made it available. Greyhound's slightly different, it's still kind of in a prototype phase. So I think I've got it open up here. This is Greyhound. Look, you can see we've reused some of the components that we did within Churchill. We look before at health. This is job seeking kind of activity. And we can start to look percentage of population. But we've introduced these two additional measures on here, so which is the velocity and acceleration. So basically the first and second differential of the percentage of population. So we can start to see where's going up, where's going down, and we can explore that over time. So that was the picture that we had, the current one. If I can go back and look at a point of time that we recognise of the recession in 2009, we can see the increase in caseload of job seeking go up and up and up and up and up until the country turns red, apart from one place. So we'll have a look at that. What's that? Aberdeenshire. So if we have a little zoom in on Aberdeenshire, see what's going on there. And we can look and see that while the rest of the country was going through the recession, Aberdeenshire was relatively sheltered because of the oil industry. Now, more recently, when the oil industry has kind of taken a hit again, we can see that Aberdeenshire has gone through effectively the same thing it did when the recession was happening, but the rest of the country hasn't. And we can have a look and see. So the rest of the country is relatively okay around here.
What variable is this again?
So this is the velocity. So this is it's the change in percentage of population of job-seeking caseload. So there's another area that was red there, which was Redcar. And we can see that that's Tata Steel there, when a big spike in job-seeking activity because of the result of Tata Steel going out of business. But the interesting thing that we can start to see with this now is the differences in the volatility of these things. So Aberdeenshire is relatively flat compared to the much more spiky Redcar. So we've taken that concept on, and we're starting to look and see whether we can examine areas that are similar in terms of their historical caseload changes, which is a separate project. Actually, so this is a more granular version of what we saw the country grow in red. So this is below local authority, and so we can start to see like where are similar, where are going red at the same time, and start to understand what's going on. Are these areas similar? So the next project that we can talk about very, very briefly, which I can't show anything on because of the data that's in it, is about Manhattan, called Manhattan, which is about industry and place. So it's a product rather than a project. Yeah, it is a this is a product rather than a project. So this is about people and places. It's named Manhattan because of the very varying economy and the kind of densely packed area. So this is about place and industry. Long Island's an extension of Manhattan where we're looking at things in a slightly different way. What we're starting to do here is look and see. So those spikes are those spikes that are occurring in the same time in the same place. Is there something similar in terms of the industries of those areas, and can we start to understand that a bit better? And Long Island's starting to bring together some of those, some of the aspects of Manhattan, some of the aspects of Greyhound. So there's another little GIF. This is a bit of work that we're doing to look at kind of clustering things by geography. So it looks quite cool. So a little bit on kind of how this has been received. So Churchill's obviously the one that we've talked about a fair bit because it's further down the line. Outside of the kind of four walls of the department, there's been quite a good reaction to it. There's been lots of interest from the outside world. We've been approached for articles and conferences and nominated for things, which has been very nice. But the point of the tool that we built was for people to use, and so as I said earlier, we kind of want to help change the way people interact with data and the way people work with data. And the feedback on that's been really encouraging too. So we've been working with Treasury quite closely on this. Treasury have been using Churchill in anger for ministerial briefings. They've been, with the feedback we've had, is that people are starting to change their work and behaviours to use Churchill first and then drill in if they need to. But it's just the start. It's early days, and like I say, we've got plans to make Churchill public relatively soon, once we overcome some of the challenges that we've got on the technology side. So
people tend to do screenshots, or is there a way of sort of PDFizing what you've found?
That's it's one of the things I've pushed back on more than anything else so far, is can we save this into a PowerPoint? So what we're doing at the minute is changing some of the back end of Churchill to kind of be able to maintain the URL for that particular view, so that people can share that and email that and have a real-time conversation rather than take this away and put it in a PowerPoint pack and just work in the same way that they've been. So we're trying to change behaviour here, which is a difficult thing to do. But yes, we're getting asked that all the time. You can do it. There is a way to do it, but I don't encourage it. So yeah, what I'm hoping from Churchill is this just raises the expectations and the standards of people's interaction with data to the same levels that we've got outside of the department, that we've got these applications that people can use. So we've got apps that curate information from different sites, like Expedia. Churchill does the same sort of thing. We've got apps that let us stay one step ahead. We've got apps that can allow us to examine things at local and national levels and know what's going on. We can access them on demand. We can use them all together. So we're starting to use these applications together. And we can change what are reactive, transactional investigations of data into proactive, conversational ones. The thing with this is when you're using open data, you can pick Churchill up on your iPad and you can go and have a conversation with the next government department, or you can go and have a conversation with a charity, and you can start actually doing having policy conversations in real time using real data. So the hope is digital products like these can facilitate the change in people's relationships with data, so people feel more comfortable. There isn't that kind of inside of work. We've got data people and non-data people. We can kind of break those barriers down a little bit and have some more conversational things going on. And overall, kind of linked with the days, kind of we're hoping that this can bridge that gap between data and society a bit. So thank you very much for listening.